In sourcing the position that the Negatzarat reflected on the one hand the levels of Omek Hara, forces emanating from extreme Klippa, the Rebbe in the Sikha turned to Sefer Yetzirah, a Kabbalistic document that states Ein Bera Lemata Minega. From my understanding, there is Kabbalah, the major textual source being the Zohar, and there is the Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah is very much concerned and relies on the manipulation of the letters of the alphabet, placing them in various configurations, applying the various forms of Atbash letter substitution and Gematria. Unfortunately, these mystical links are very often misused by some who have made the Kabbalah into a magical document serving their own personal agendas. A modern-day reincarnation would be the manipulation of letters in the Torah in the form of the Bible codes that have been used very often with 20/20 hindsight to demonstrate how the Torah has predicted the election of presidents, climate change disasters in the form of tsunami and tornadoes, and so forth. With respect to the statement made by the Sefer Yetzirah regarding the Omek Hara component of Negatzarat, there is an introductory observation made by the Sefer Yetzirah, and that is Ein Betova Lema'ala Mi Oneg, a statement that on the surface at least has nothing to do with the Negatzarat. The translation, there is no goodness, Tova, in contrast to the Ra'ah, that is higher than the state of Oneg. Oneg linked to concepts such as Oneg Shabbat, the pleasure, serenity the one derives from Shabbat. And here we get into some wordplay in which the word nega, the plague, and oneg, pleasure and satisfaction, share the same three letters, a valid connection in the world of drush. The Rebbe, however, goes one step further and applies a Kabbalistic interpretation from the world of Sod, and that is that it is possible that from the extreme depths of nega, the intense klipa, one can bring oneself to the highest level of kedusha expressed in the concept of oneg, which again is an interesting concept, but lacks the method that this transition takes place within the context of the Sikha, where we have defined the two extremes and asked the very same question: how does one move from Omek Hara to Ribi Hatov? And the response given by the Rebbe that this comes about through acceptance of the reasons as to why one was struck down with the Negatzarat, the leprosy, and for which one takes accountability for one's actions, undertakes the process of Teshuvah, which in of itself, according to Rabbi Avahu, raises the individual to a level beyond that of a tzaddik gamur, one who has never sinned. While on the topic of the esoteric, I would like to digress away from the Sikha text, the Naleket and Rabbi Yochanan, where according to Rabbi Avahu, the Baal Tshuva stands on a level higher to that of a tzaddik. This was based upon his interpretation to Yeshayahu 57:19 that states Shalom, Shalom l'rachok u'lekarov. The rachok u'lekarov refers to the Baal Tshuva who has undertaken a process of tshuva. At one point in time in his or her life, he or she was rachok, distanced from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but now is karov, to the point that they attain a double level of shalom, peace and tranquility. Or, as we noted earlier, the level of oneg. There was also the position of Rabbi Yochanan, who disagrees and argues that in the Messianic age, the tzaddik gamur will attain level of kedusha that are described in the 64th parak of Yeshayahu, ayin lo ra'ata, beyond the reach, beyond the concept of any human being. This Naleket extends from a rather interesting Mishnah that states Hamitpalel v'ta'ah, if one while davening makes a verbal error in his or her prayers, siman ra lo. That error, be it a Freudian slip, is an indication that ra, something bad, may happen to him or her. V'im shaliach tzibur hu, if the mistake was made by the chazan, then not only is the siman ra lo to the chazan, but siman ra l'sholch, it is a sign that some unfortunate event may happen to the congregation that the chazan represents. Fortunately, the Gemara limits the mistake to specifically the first bracha of the Shemona Esrei. While on the topic of care that one must have in one's communication with HaKadosh Baruch Hu through tefillah, the Mishnah goes on to record that Amru alav al Rab Chanina ben Dosa, There was a Tana about whom legend has it, Shahaya mitpalel al hacholim. The people would come to him requesting that he should pray on behalf of relatives, for example, that were critically ill, and v'omer, and in some cases he would respond that zeh chai, there's nothing to worry about because the individual from whom he was praying would recover. But there are also situations where his response was that he can do nothing through prayer v'zeh met, and ultimately the individual would die. And as an aside, this process of going to a righteous individual to ask for a bracha is a well-established custom, even to this day, and in particular within the Hasidic circles of the Frum Orthodox movement. The term that's used nowadays for such a request is the writing of a kvitul, to which the Mishnah records that Amru Lo, they challenged Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, Minayin ata yodea, how are you able to know whether the person would live or die? To which he responded, Im shigurat filati befi, if when I pray there is a degree of fluency with the prayer, then yodea ani shehu mukubal, then I know that the prayer has been accepted and the outcome will be positive. V'im lav, however, if I struggle with the word, yodea ani shehu maturaf, that my prayers will be rejected. The Gemara picks up upon the statement of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa that links the fluency of prayer to its acceptance or non-acceptance, and asks, Mina hane milei, what textual basis, if any, is there to this linkage? Clearly the question was not asked directly to Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. The response comes from Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, that this interaction between man and God through the intercession of a righteous individual, tzaddik, a rebbe, is validated by a statement in Yeshayahu 57:19. This is the pasuk that was used by Rabbi Avahu as a basis for his position that a Bal Tshuva, one who is rachok and becomes karov, stands on a higher level than a tzaddik who had never sinned. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi uses the opening and closing statements that Borei niv sfatayim, niv spelt with a vav, Amar Hashem, Urifativ, the Lord that creates the expression of the lips says, I will heal him. The niv sfatayim refers to the one praying on behalf of another individual, and the fluency of prayer resulting in the acceptance of that prayer and the individual recovering from what otherwise might be a critical illness. We are still at midpoint of the Sikha, but at this stage I shall bring to a conclusion part 3 of my rendition of this Sikha.